Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is Ukraine War News Update, first part thereof for the 10th of December 2023. This is somewhat later than normal. I've just spent hours by the creek getting absolutely pummeled by torrential rain in the howling winds, watching my son get absolutely mullered in a game of rugby playing against behemoth gargantuans. So glad to be back inside. I am very wet through though. Nonetheless, this is, we're talking about a war where the conditions are far worse for the people sitting in the trenches at the moment, goodness me. And I think those conditions have probably affected the figures that we see from the front line yet again. There are 700 personnel lost according to the Ukrainian General Staff, and all the caveats to these figures are in the description to the video below. 4 tanks, 10 APVs and 6 artillery systems. That's a very low set of statistics compared to what we have seen. And I think the snow and the rain and the mud and the general conditions are not good, not conducive for a very active front line. 25 vehicles and fuel tanks. That's not a bad day in that category, and 3 pieces of special equipment. So what does Andrew Perpetua, the mapper that I rely on quite a lot, see in terms of the socials and looking at the losses for both sides? Well, pretty much parity, a couple more for the Russians. Let's look at the value of the stuff that's been destroyed for the Ukrainians. A couple of older T-64 tanks, a boat, and then some BTRs, infantry fighting vehicles basically, and a few bits of civilian equipment. Nothing of too high value there. There is a book M1 or possibly M2 being destroyed, which is fairly high value. It's an air defense system. A few T-80s, T-72 B3M with a mine roller taken out, infantry fighting vehicle, and the rest is civilians and trucks. So give or take, vaguely similar, but that air defense system is probably something the Russians will rue losing. Here it is, a Russian air defense system. The book was destroyed, so you can check that out. That is on, link to that is in the description below. We can have a little bit of analysis concerning the, the types of tank by age that have been destroyed. So more Russian downshifting of technical capability to get more numbers right now, says Trent Telenko. So the Richard Vrecker, who I think works for War Spotting, it's kind of an equivalent to Oryx. Graph of destroyed Russian tanks by age and type, showing the rapid increase in the OBR 2022 variant. So you might think, oh, we got 2022 variants coming on board. They are newer tanks. The OBR 2022 upgrades are actually less capable and less sophisticated than the T-72 B3s and the OBR 2016 variants, but will be quicker and easier to do. But the change is so rapid, it suggests that Russia might not have many T-72s and is struggling to upgrade rapidly to the T-72 B3 OBR 2022. Caveat, there are only 6 T-72 losses in December that we can tell what type of T-72. There are 2 OBR 2022s, the T-72 OBR 2022 and the T-72 B3 OBR 2022. The B3 is more capable than the B variant. Okay, so what this might suggest is that they're quickly upgrading tanks to this newer variation that is less capable than the other pre-existing variants of the T-72 here. So very old T-72s, few of them. We are seeing less older T-72s. I guess, well, compared to earlier on in the war, fewer T-72 B3 OBR 2016. And then, as you can see, a very large proportion is taken up by these newer but less capable T-72s, and that will be as a result of sanctions and not being able to build with the desired specification that they want. Okay. Moving on, we have an infographic I was meant to show you days ago, actually. So this is when, on the back of the Karakurt class corvette, the Askold, that was now labelled beyond repair, and that was one in the Kerch, just there in the Kerch, not the dry dock, but actually moored, almost ready to go, and that was taken out by Ukrainian missile strike. So actually, there are a number of vessels that have been sunk. Saratov, Tapir class LST, Novocherkassk, Rapucha class LST, Cesar Kunikov, a Rapucha class LST. So these were Tochka U missiles at Berdyansk, took these out. The Moskva, that was a serious loss because that was a flagship, Slava class, and that was sunk by a Neptune anti-ship cruise missile. The Veliki Ustyug, a BMM class corvette, Vasily Bek, rescue tug, taken out. So observed damage by an undertow on the Volga River, presumed sunk by 2 Harpoon missiles, that second one. The Ivan Golubets, the Natia class, damaged during a drone attack at Sevastopol. Olenogorsky Gornyak, a Rapucha class. These are the landing ships, as far as I can work out. Damaged during a drone attack at Novorossiysk. That's interesting because that is the port at which the ships are now being moored. Rather than Sevastopol, they're being moved to Novorossiysk. Well, actually, the Ukrainians can still have hit that port or just outside the port, I think it was. Minsk, the Rapucha class, was destroyed by Storm Shadow missiles at Sevastopol. Rostov-on-Don, Kilo class submarine, destroyed by Storm Shadows, again at Sevastopol, that's at the same point. And then the most recent one is the Askold, this corvette of the Karakurt class, destroyed by Storm Shadows at Kerch. So Storm Shadows doing a pretty good job, but also we've got Tochka U, that's right back at the beginning of the war, and the Neptune missile famously taking out the Moskva. Otherwise, yeah, Harpoons and USVs. Don't know what damaged the Veliki Ustyug. But there's a list of the ships, and this is where the Ukrainians have had some success. So these are high-value targets. The Russians really want Crimea because of the practicality of Sevastopol as a deep-sea warm water port. And if they've had to move their ships from there to elsewhere, then that renders their ownership of, or their occupation of, Crimea somewhat kind of pointless or moot. This is a real success for the Ukrainians. It'll be interesting to see whether they can strike any more. I mean, it's 4th of November. That was a month ago, just over a month ago. Are they able to continue harassing the Black Sea Fleet, especially as, you know, there are these rumors of cruise missiles being stocked up, and those ships are very capable of firing them, or at least they are in principle. One wonders whether they're having trouble loading them due to the loading facilities being at Sevastopol. Okay, moving on here. Magyar's birds, there's plenty of footage coming out of drone warfare of all sorts. I've seen a whole montage of drones just hitting individual, so people and groups of people, soldiers, the Ukrainian Special Forces drone operators, taking out people, and we've got to the point where it seems that nobody's safe. Yeah, if you're traveling on a vehicle on top of a BTR or something, you're going to be hunted down by first-person view drones with some high probability. But just I've seen people trying to evacuate wounded soldiers, getting hit, people lying in trenches, lying in foxholes, people just walking, people running away in different directions, people running together, and whole groups being hit. I've just seen a whole variety just in the last 24 hours of troops being individually and collectively targeted by drones. They are an absolute nuisance, I assume, for both sides. That applies. But anyway, Magyar's birds has destroyed a valuable electronic warfare device mounted on a BTR-82A, which is likely a Lorendit RP-377 UVM-1L. Okay, whatever. Those electronic warfare devices can be mounted on several kinds of vehicles. And this paraphrases the importance of the usage of electronic warfare in this sector and beyond. So this is down in the Kherson area, no doubt. Russian war bloggers are complaining that the Ukrainian army was controlling the skies of Krinky, and a failed attempt to deploy the Lorendit emphasizes that Russians are trying to compensate for that. This is important equipment for the Ukrainians to keep destroying. So the Russians are unable to get, if you like, a foothold in the air a wing hold in the air. The Russians are at a disadvantage in the Krinky area, according to multiple sources, and the Ukrainians need to keep it that way, and this will help to achieve that. On December the 7th, Russian media reported that an explosive device went off spontaneously during fire training at Dobrovichi training ground in the Ryazan region. Now it's become known that the commander of the regional SOBR, Special Rapid Response Unit of the Rosgvardia, Lieutenant Colonel Alexei Sitnikov, died during the explosion. So that's another high-ranking officer dying, this time in a training accident in Russia. Now, moving on to distant strikes, another quiet night, all things considered. There was quite heavy shelling going on in a number of places, but not too much in terms of drones and cruise missiles as far as I can work out. Yesterday in Makivka, there was a huge fire at what looks like an oil depot that caught fire after shelling, I believe. I don't know. Shelling, as I've said before, can mean artillery shelling, as you'd normally expect that to mean. But actually, they use it for rocket attacks as well. So who knows what actually struck that Makivka oil depot, but it was going on for a long time. So this is at night time. The fire at the gas station is still not being extinguished, says Null reports. And yeah, that was a significant hit for Russian logistics. So well done to Ukrainians there. Okay, moving on to other bits and pieces. I reported on there being a chicken egg queue somewhere else, and someone rightfully said, I don't think this is going to be widespread. I think it'll be localized. There are claims of poultry shortages in Russia, but it's interesting that in Belgorod, you've now got another queue queuing for, particularly for eggs. Similar queues we've seen last weekend at the farmers market in Saratov. Eggs have increased in the price by 4.4% over the last week and by 36.6% over the last year in Russia. I mean, that is bad, but it's not like crazy bad, given that you can have insane inflation going on, and there has been in different areas of the world. However, there are more of these issues with supply of certain foodstuffs popping up. Right, new protection of trenches from first-person view drones by Russian troops, reports Geraman, and this goes to show how much of an issue drones are. Like I was talking about earlier, well, these are some of the things you can do to stop your trenches getting hit by these drones. And I figure that would be fairly low cost, fairly high impact. I presume these would catch drones quite successfully, or cause them to not hit the targets as well as they otherwise would. And likewise, fortifications of the Ukrainians alongside of the front line here goes to show that they're putting a lot of effort into securing trench lines. There's talk that behind Bakhmut, no, not behind Bakhmut, yes, behind Bakhmut at Chasiv Yar, and also behind Avdiivka to the west, the Ukrainians are putting a lot of effort into building proper trench lines, and these look fairly stalwart jobs. They've done fairly robust trench lines. The weather in Ukraine right now, to give you an idea about the circumstances men are fighting in, says Null reports. Here we have someone's equipment is basically frozen into their pockets. And it's difficult. Of course, it's going to be difficult this time of year. If it's not the mud and the wet, it's the cold and the snow and the ice. And of course, what you really want to watch out for is getting damp, getting wet and then cold. Dry cold, if you like, or if you're dry and in the cold, it's not too bad. If you're wet, if you're damp and then it's freezing temperatures, that's when you have all sorts of problems. And so the inability to get dry is a real challenge for both sides in this ongoing war. Anyway, that's enough for the front line. Not front line. That's enough from the first video for the news today. Not a crazy amount of news to report. More to follow in the geopolitical and military aid segment, and more of me probably just getting annoyed with the state of the world, I guess. Anyway, take care, everybody. Speak soon.